the last 10 years, I've been honoured to spend time working in some of Britain's toughest neighbourhoods. Through the organisation I lead, called the Centre for Social Justice, I've come face to face with intense poverty and serious entrenched deprivation across our country. I've met people in the depths of despair, drug addicts, alcoholics, prisoners. In Belmarsh, Britain's highest security jail, I sat with a 21-year-old boy who had just been sentenced to 40 years inside. I've met survivors of slavery, families who are sleeping all together on one mattress in one room, children living in cars, the homeless, fathers who are suicidal because of the debt weighing down on their families. I've been embraced by mothers who have lost murdered sons, and I've walked the streets of communities where life expectancy is as low as 54. My job has been to put these people center stage in British politics and to try and find solutions to the issues that blight their lives. It's been a remarkable privilege, and it has changed my life. And today I want to tell you about a few of the people I've met and to show you briefly a parallel Britain. And because it's messy and uncomfortable and difficult to face up to, it's a side of our society that too many people, including politicians, have wanted to push out of sight, out of mind. But over the last 10 years, I've seen it. It's real. We have pushed and dumped together some of the most vulnerable people in our country to the edges of our towns and cities and left them alone. And when I meet people living there, they tell me that they've had to develop alternative systems, parallel ways of coping, things to get by. Take Darren, a gang member I know from London. Darren reckons he's seen violence 3 times a week, 52 weeks of the year, for 8 years now. There's more than 1,200 violent acts that have conditioned his young brain. Not once, by the way, did he ever call the police. He says on his estate you can buy a gun for a few £1,000s brand new, but if you're prepared to use one with bodies on it, which means it's been used in at least one murder before, you can get one for just a couple £100s. In his gang were what they called stick-em-up kids. Stick-em-up kids may have been as young as 16, and their job was to rob robbers, to steal from drug dealers, to target anyone who had large amounts of cash in their area. In the absence of real police, who didn't often go there, his gang used to police the estate. They would patrol the perimeters. They wouldn't bother old ladies, but they had a suspects list. They would stop unknown visitors. Hostiles would be attacked without warning. Darren told me about the time his young friend came into the house shot. Blood pouring out. But because they found an exit wound where the bullet had been, they just got some Dettol, cleaned him up, and when the panic had died down, they all just started laughing. Because like Darren said to me, when you don't die here, it's a good day. His estate is a parallel Britain. Last summer, I also met Claire. Claire's 15. But she doesn't go to school because there are so many difficult things going on in her life. She lives in a children's home, which is the place you're sent when your own family is too dangerous or unable to look after you anymore. She was abused really badly as a young girl by the people who she should have been able to trust. Her mother, amongst other things, used to hire her out to bring in money for her habits. And as you talk to Claire, you start to notice she's got cuts up and down her arms because she's been self-harming to deal with the pain of what she carries every day. She can't really look you in the eye because she has so many problems dealing with trust and new people. She eats really bad food as a way of trying to draw comfort every day. Claire is one of 91,000 children in our care system in this country, and too many of them go into adult life carrying huge amounts of baggage and abuse. Too many have been let down at every single opportunity by families and by a system that was supposed to rescue them. Claire's childhood was lived out in this parallel Britain. At the other end of life, a few years ago, I met Margaret. Margaret was in her 80s, but she was so lonely that, as a friend of mine describes it, she was living to die. Really, she was just existing. She was existing in one room. It was damp and cold because she often had to choose, in the winter at least, between heating and eating. Her husband had died years ago. Her friends had grown distant or also died. She didn't really have family around. And because her life lacked so much purpose, she didn't tend to bother to cook for herself, so she was malnourished. Like 5 million older people in our country, Margaret says the television is her main form of company. Like 1 million older people in our country, she says she is often or always lonely. That loneliness isn't just sad, it's dangerous, because research now shows us that loneliness carries the same kind of health risks as smoking or obesity. Margaret, who used to be a teacher, commanding classrooms, is now a prisoner behind her own front door. She can see the outside world through her net curtains, but she's terrified of it. Darren, Claire, Margaret, hundreds of thousands of others like them, living in this second Britain. It's a parallel Britain. And at the same time as people like that are facing a crisis in life, two big debates are underway that could fundamentally shape whether our country is set up to help them or not. The first is economic, and the second is about legitimacy in institutions. Because of very real problems and pressures with our country's finances, we're currently borrowing about £100 billion this year just to break even, to make up the difference between what we spend as a country and what we bring in. And the national debt, going up, of course, because of our deficit, is currently £1.2 trillion. Which means every day, if you look at it, we're spending about £130 million just on debt interest as a country. And what that boils down to, fundamentally, is a debate about what government is for. How big is it? What should it do? Who should it prioritize? Who can we care for at a time of tough resources? And as that debate is playing out, about whether it's people like Darren, Claire, and Margaret, or whether it is perhaps the middle classes who tend to vote, a second debate is underway. And it perhaps presents itself sometimes in the form of celebrities who rail against the system and tell people that democracy is finished. They don't bother voting and they don't see the point, and politicians are all corrupt and the same and it's pointless. Recently, it presented itself through some people who took to English streets and rioted and stole for a few days. It presents itself in many of the young people I meet who are angry. They're not apathetic, they're just angry because they think politics is so far removed from their real world. It presents itself in the form of people not bothering to vote anymore. There is a crisis of confidence, trust, and legitimacy in many of the institutions we used to rely on to help people in that parallel Britain. It's a mess. A deep need for social reform meets an economic emergency, meets a crisis of confidence in our institutions and a lack of trust. But today I want to suggest that there are two things we can do to start to turn this around, to start to build a society of the second chance for people trapped in that parallel Britain. The first, give an hour a week to one of Britain's remarkable life changers. Because everywhere I've been over the last 10 years, no matter how bleak or dark, I've seen the flickering light of hope in people's lives in the form of a community project, a local church, a charity, working to change lives in that second society of ours. Rarely noticed, often not thanked, but changing lives, the lifeblood of our country and the people that Darren, Claire, and Margaret are relying on. Imagine what an hour a week of your time might do for people like that. It would change their lives. And the second thing I think we need to do, and I appreciate this is a tougher sell today, is to engage with British politics. I've seen politics up close for years now. Yes, it can be infuriating. Yes, it can be petty. Yes, the person who said that politics is really show business for ugly people was right. And yes, politicians from all sides of the debate have presided over a system that has actually made things worse, not better, in so many cases. But I have also seen the potential of British politics to change lives. And I know members of Parliament and politicians who are desperate to make a difference to people who have been left behind. Government really matters, because if we go and volunteer for an hour a week in our local project, we might help 100 people a year. But if we also get it right in Parliament, through public policy and government, we could save the lives of hundreds of thousands of people a year. But the people in this parallel Britain I've met don't have much of a voice these days. They don't tend to vote. They don't tend to start campaigns. They're not very loud. But they really matter. And the people helping them and them need our help. We have to show politicians through the projects that I've seen for the last 10 years, those life changes, we have to show politicians what it takes to change lives. Because what we see as people changes who we are and how we think. And people working with people in that parallel Britain tell us what it might take. They say it's about stable families for our children, getting help to parents who are doing the hardest job in the world, supporting relationships when they come under the inevitable strains of life. These charities tell us it's about brilliant education, not just for the poorest children or the richest, but for everyone, getting teachers into the worst schools and helping them to be turned around. They say it's about getting people into work and helping them to stay in work. That is about new jobs, but it's also about new skills, confidence, aspiration, and a welfare system that says we will back you if you choose to take work. It's about getting help to people with damaging debts, getting people free from drug and alcohol addiction that can so often ruin lives. That's what it might take if we had a politics that put the parallel Britain center stage. But we know we can also change British politics if we put our minds to it, because of some work we've been doing at the Centre for Social Justice of late, with charities working with victims of human trafficking and modern slavery in our country. We've shown government what it can do. We've shown government how to get people out of exploitation. We've shown government what it might take to go after the criminal gangs. And we've shown government what it might take to improve the way we respond as a country. And because government has seen, they're acting. And this Parliament is about to pass a modern slavery bill, which for the first time in 200 years means Britain might just be about to stand up and take on slavery in our generation once more. So that is my plea today. Don't abandon British politics, transform it. Don't surrender the corridors of power to people who assume they are born to rule. Put that parallel Britain center stage as our Parliament's priority. Because through those projects and a new politics, we can change the fact that the poorest people in our country die 25 years younger than the richest. We can change the fact that 1 million children have no contact with their father. We can change the fact that hundreds of thousands of young people are unemployed and fear their futures. We can change the fact that more than 50,000 young people play truant from schools every day. We can change the fact that hundreds of thousands of men and women are addicted to drugs and alcohol. We can change the fact that 1 million women are victims of domestic abuse every year. And we can change the fact that thousands of people, men, women, and children in our country, are caught up in exploitation, abuse, and modern slavery. We can change those things and a whole lot more. It was William Wilberforce, a British parliamentarian who 200 years ago led his generation in the fight against modern slavery, who said this: "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know." Well, we have seen a group of people in our country cut adrift, caught up in poverty and hopelessness and deprivation. They're crying out for our help. We have seen, we know how to change their lives. It's time for us to act. Let us take this precious opportunity. Thank you.